The November gales are upon us. We are seeing definitely a pretty good strong low pressure system that moved through over the last day or so. And then guess what? With that, a lot of strong winds, gusts of 40 to 60 miles per hour or so through the Midwest and Great Lakes in spots. So this robust storm system winds down, and then we get a lake effect set up because of 3 different lakes connecting. If you follow these different streamlines, you can see how you pick up multiple batches of moisture off these relatively humid, warm Great Lakes with this Arctic blast and with the west wind. This is how you kind of carry it, and where we can see where the lake effect snow bands set up and where they do and persist for hours on end throughout your Thanksgiving. We're talking about half a foot to a foot plus of snow. Yeah. And then we start to diffuse that system, and another system starts to form off further towards the west as we go on in towards the weekend. Another big system. It's going to be a very, very active pattern that is now currently setting its way on up across the area. We'll show you that here. Happy Thanksgiving to you, meteorologist Brian Ivy, for your Snowplow News Norcast weather video. You can see those multiple different snow bands coming off the Great Lakes throughout your Thanksgiving with a residual batch of more system snow into Ontario. This will start winding down as we go into early portions of your Black Friday, and still seeing snow showers though across portions of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, into the mountains as well. That will then wind down once we go in towards Friday night before our next system forms. Big low. There is a nice moisture connection pushing across the country. Look at all the snow potential for Chicago, for Iowa, for much of Wisconsin, back into the Twin Cities. As this slides off towards the north and east, it's going to be very dependent on track. We'll talk more about that. But for the lake effect side of things, yes, areas that will see several inches of snow, even over a foot in those main areas where you have a Lake Superior connection, a little bit of Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, and then a little bit of Lake Ontario. That is definitely going to be pretty potent in spots. And then guess what? There's the next system, and some areas will be seeing significant snowfall on the backside of that. So here comes this system. Now, is the low going to be down here? Is it going to be up here? That is still something we need to exactly figure out as we go into the weekend, because that is going to be the difference between who sees a lot of rain or who sees at least a little bit of mixing, and it greatly will determine totals. But this could be a pretty big event in terms of snowfall totals for areas that are going to be all snow. Cold front moves on through. High pressure, Canadian cold air pushing on in on the backside. A little bit of lake effect still as this system moves off towards the northeast. Not expecting anything for the coastal areas. A little bit of residual lake effect before, again, right on its heels, a little bit of snow coming out of the Colorado Front Range. Moving into Oklahoma. How about Kansas? How about portions of Arkansas? Yeah. Welcome to winter. The prediction of an early start to winter is definitely what we've been talking about for over a month or so. That has been actually going back a few months. That's definitely happening. Now, as this system rounds the bend, is this going to have potential to be a snowmaker for the Mid-Atlantic areas, for portions of the bigger cities in the Northeast? The potential is there. Is it going to maybe be a little bit more interior? Probably, but it is something, again, to keep a close eye on going in towards portions of late Monday, Tuesday, into early Wednesday before another system forms across the middle portion of the country. So yes, very, very active for sure. So when we look at everything throughout the next week, it's not going to be a super ton of snow out west, but there will definitely be multiple pockets of some pretty good accumulation depending on where this lands. Yeah, we're talking over a foot of snow, lake effect plus the system snow for sure. But a good widespread couple of inches or so. And yes, we do think there's going to be at least a corridor of some snow. Does it have potential to be a bigger deal event? Yes, but there should be some accumulating snow. DC, New York, Boston even. Look at how far south some of the snow will get. Not a ton, but not a huge event into portions of the mountains as we go forward into much of next week, as it looks like right now out towards the west, as things generally will become more mild out there with the cold air streaming on in further off towards the east and towards the plains into mid-Atlantic areas. This is just such an active pattern. Multiple different systems coming in off the Pacific Ocean and moving across portions of the U.S. as we go throughout portions of this next week. This is just kind of another way to be able to visualize that. You could see as it traverses across the mountains, you get kind of a different swing effect there, as you definitely will be having to keep an eye on many storm systems that are going to allow for above average precipitation in a fairly widespread manner. I'll show you that 6 to 10 day precipitation forecast compared to average, and yes, definitely a fairly wet pattern across much of the country. And that's needed because we've been dry. Very happy Thanksgiving to you. Look at this. This is the last 60 days and big areas of well below average amounts of rainfall, all the way from pretty much the plains through much of the eastern portion of the country. So we'll take what we can get in terms of rainfall, in terms of snowfall also. Multiple batches of pretty cold air will be moving in at times. That mild air generally stays fairly far to the south. At times it tries to push on in a little bit, but then it backs right back off, and then it'll have to push further off towards the west. But I mean, this conveyor belt of colder air will generally be around, at least a little bit below average, but with a few more Arctic intrusions of well below average air coming down and at least sideswiping areas of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley into the northeast, mid-Atlantic at times, going throughout the next 10 days, and that's going to set up a pretty cold pattern next week. Actually, well below average from the Twin Cities through the Great Lakes, and even pretty chilly into much of the northeast. There's a southeast ridge at times that's going to try to form. The biggest determinator as we go throughout weeks 2, weeks 3 is going to be, is this going to be suppressed, or does this have chance to build a little bit more? But regardless, it's probably going to be pretty chilly in the plains throughout much of the lakes. Thanks for watching.